The twin sons of Irene. 7 bathed the valley in gold. Wind swept across wide fields of crimson grass, swaying in rhythm with the breath of a planet at peace. Above, the glass domes of Colony Iona shimmered like dewdrops, each sheltering a world of human progress. Hydroponic towers, learning halls, habitat rings. Laughter echoed faintly from the central square, where children chased digital butterflies beneath the shade of transplanted earth oaks. It was a place where people had stopped looking back at Earth with longing and begun to dream outward. Dr. Alia Voss stood at the edge of a cliff overlooking the settlement, her datapad cradled in one arm, fingers swiping through the results of the latest linguistic algorithms. The alien artifact found beneath the southern mesa had begun emitting pulses again, low-frequency waves that matched no pattern yet known. But it wasn't just noise. Not this time. "They're trying to talk to us," she said aloud, mostly to herself. Behind her, Lien Harrow exhaled slowly, arms crossed. The diplomat's polished shoes were already collecting dust, but he didn't seem to notice. "You're sure?" he asked. "Not yet, but the rhythm is deliberate. There's structure, repetition." She hesitated. "They've been watching longer than we thought." Lien's brow furrowed. "Then why wait until now?" That was the question neither of them wanted to answer. The hum of a descending skiff interrupted their thoughts. It landed softly on the adjacent platform, kicking up red dust as Commander Sato Lin emerged, still in full combat uniform despite the sweltering heat. His eyes, sharp and never calculating, swept over both of them before landing on Alia's screen. "Trouble?" he asked. "Potential contact," Alia said, handing him the pad. He scanned it briefly. "That's not contact. That's interference." "No," she said. "It's language. Just not ours." Sato didn't argue, but the set of his jaw hardened. He didn't believe in hunches. He believed in shields and armor and launch codes. Still, he pocketed the pad and nodded once. "I'll increase perimeter patrols." "You think it's a threat?" Lien asked. Sato paused. "Everything unknown is a potential threat." That night, the signal doubled in strength. Within hours, colony-wide systems began to glitch. Localized power flickers, false environmental alerts, corrupted guidance maps. Tech crews scrambled, unsure if it was a cascading failure or something worse. Alia didn't sleep. She watched the signal grow more complex, more elegant. Each frequency braided a kind of music she couldn't yet translate. By morning, children had stopped laughing. The valley felt too quiet. The skies broke open just after noon. No one saw them arrive. They were simply there, in the sky, in the air, in the soil. Ships shaped like inverted thorns appeared above the domes, hovering in perfect silence. Gravity faltered. The atmosphere thickened with electromagnetic pressure. One by one, systems failed. Communications died first, then power grids, then guidance, then the screaming began. Alia ran, not from fear, but from purpose. She sprinted toward the archives, toward the alien artifact. If they were here, she had to know why. Had they come to speak? Or to silence? The artifact was gone. The chamber that housed it, sealed in reinforced titanium, lay torn open like paper. The walls were scorched, not by fire but by energy that had left no trace of heat. Only silence. Only absence. Outside, the ground shook. Not from missiles. There was no sound, no flash, no smoke. Only people falling, clutching their heads, their spines arching violently. Neural disruption. Alia realized too late. Something that unraveled the mind before the body had time to resist. She staggered, clutching the wall, her vision swimming. And then it stopped, just as suddenly as it began. She opened her eyes to the sound of nothing. No sirens, no shouts, no cries, just a faint buzz of dust settling. Sato Lin's voice crackled over the emergency band, somehow still functional. "All units retreat to fallback stations. If you can hear this, get underground. This is not a drill." Alia stumbled into the command bunker minutes later, nearly collapsing into the chair beside Lien, who looked pale and sick. "Where's the rest?" she gasped. He didn't answer. Sato turned from the central holodeble, face drawn but resolute. 90% of our population is unaccounted for. I have reason to believe they're dead. Or worse. Worse. Alia whispered. He tapped the screen. Surveillance drones picked us up before blackout. The image flickered, then stabilized. It showed the dome plaza, children and parents frozen mid-movement, bodies perfectly still as tall. Gaunt figures walked among them. The aliens were humanoid, but wrong, limbs too long, heads smooth and expressionless, their eyes like voids. One knelt before a boy and placed a 3-fingered hand on his chest. Then the boy simply disappeared. Not vaporized. Erased. Lien turned away. We were never meant to survive this, Sato said. They're harvesting, Alia breathed, or testing. That word hung in the air like smoke. They tried to send a final message to Earth. Sato used a backup relay buried in the canyon, an emergency uplink meant for extinction-level events. He gave Alia exactly 90 seconds to speak. This is Dr. Alia Voss from Colony Iona. Irene 7, she said, her voice trembling but clear. We made contact. It wasn't peaceful. They have technology we can't understand. They are capable of unmaking matter at will. We were not prepared. We never stood a chance. She paused. But it wasn't random. They responded to the artifact. To us digging. We triggered this. Then she looked straight at the lens. Please don't make the same mistake. Don't retaliate until you understand what they are, or you'll wake something worse. The message ended before the system was crushed under the weight of a gravimetric distortion that imploded the canyon itself. In the final hour, Sato Lin led the remaining 74 survivors toward the emergency launch hangar buried beneath the mountain. One shuttle remained operational. Barely. It wasn't designed for space travel beyond the system, but would reach the relay hub orbiting Irene's second moon. From there, maybe they could warn others. Maybe. He turned to Alia as they sealed the hatch. We're leaving ghosts behind. They're not ghosts, she said. They're data, witnesses, and someone must carry them. The engines ignited. The last view of Irene. 7 was not a flame or battle, but of silence, stillness, as if the planet had been folded inward, smoothed over. Nothing moved. Nothing remained. Hours later, drifting in orbit, the survivors watched as the stars behind the planet distorted and then blinked. Irene, 7 was no longer there. It had never been. In a darkened chamber aboard the shuttle, Lien stared out the viewport, lips barely moving. They didn't kill us out of hate, he said. They did it because they could. Alia turned away. Sato stood motionless. In the distance, a relay light blinked red. Signal received, transmission passed. Earth had heard, and Earth would answer. The chamber at Aegis Prime, the orbital heart of Earth's interstellar governance, was quieter than it had ever been, not for lack of presence. Representatives from every continent, habitat ring, and off-world colony were present, seated in ascending tiers like specters in judgment. The silence was not absence. It was anticipation, the breathless pause before a world changed course. General Kale Dron stood at the central dais, his uniform dark as vacuum, his presence heavier than the gravity stabilizers beneath the floor. A holographic projection spun slowly behind him, a wireframe model of Irene 7 solar system, its primary planet marked in red, now flag lost. Alongside it, the last transmission from the colony flickered. Alia Voss's face, grainy and grief-worn, her voice clipped by static. The silence that followed her final words was louder than any weapon. They erased the planet, Dron said, voice even. They didn't negotiate. They didn't occupy. They didn't enslave. They erased. Murmurs rose from the delegates. Chancellor Noemi Ibarra of the South American Coalition leaned forward. And your recommendation? Dron's gaze swept the room like a blade. Retribution. Not a gesture. Not a threat. A statement. One they'll never forget. From the lower tier, the envoy from Mars stood abruptly. A statement of genocide? They committed genocide first, Dron replied. This isn't vengeance. It's balance. Noemi Ibarra tapped her screen, bringing up a sequence of intelligence reports. What do we know about them? Where they're from, their leadership, their motive. Nothing, Dron admitted. But the signal that triggered the attack originated from a planet in the Theta 9X system. Our deep space scans match it with the artifact's energy signature. You're advocating the annihilation of a system based on matching frequencies? Dron didn't blink. I'm advocating survival. From the back, a calm voice cut through the noise. That's not survival. That's escalation. All eyes turned as Alia Voss stepped into the chamber. Pale, weary, but alive. Dron's mouth set into a hard line. You weren't cleared for this session. I came to remind you what we're about to become. She moved to the center, her presence fragile but firm. A flick of her hand, and a new projection bloomed. An analysis of the alien signal, annotated, layered with the linguistic structure she'd been studying on Irene 7. This was a reply, she said. We triggered something when we unearthed the artifact. It wasn't an act of war. It was protocol, an automated defense, perhaps even a warning. A warning that kills 80,000 people in less than a day? Dron snapped. No, Alia said softly. A warning, not a dig deeper. And we ignored it. Dron turned to the assembly. You've heard her. We speculate while they act. We argue while they race. Earth has never faced an enemy that doesn't want territory or dominance. But silence. They want our absence. Noemi raised a hand. What's the alternative, General? There isn't one, Dron said. That's the cost of deterrence. Operation Celestial Verdict is ready. The Starveil device is in transit. If deployed in the core of Theta 9X, the chain reaction will collapse the system's primary star. The gravity well will consume everything within 40 million kilometers. Silence returned, heavier than before. The device had only ever been theory, a last resort. Now, Dron spoke it like a scalpel. Alia stepped back, her voice quieter but unwavering. If we do this, we become the thing we fear. Then fear will serve us, Dron said. Hours later, in the deep silence of Earth's Strategic Command Center, Dron stood alone before a screen listing the mission's final checks. He watched the progress bars climb. Launch approval, navigation lock, fusion containment. A softness broke the air as Lien Harrow entered. His diplomatic credentials gave him access, but he'd never stood in this room before. Dron didn't turn to greet him. I'm not here to stop you, Lien said. That ship sailed with the last survivors of Irene 7. Dron's fingers paused on the launch panel. Then why are you here? Lien stared at the growing red arc on the screen. Theta 9X, already aligning in the launch corridor. Because I want to remember the moment we stopped being human. We're defending our kind. No, Lien said. We're defining it. Dron turned slowly. You want justice. So do I. But we can't have justice without consequence. They struck first. We strike last. They struck blindly. We strike deliberately. That difference will echo through the stars. A long moment passed. Then Dron turned back, typed the final confirmation. Authorization complete. The Starveil detonator activated with a soundless signal, launching its carrier through the void. It would take 5 days to reach the core of Theta 9X. 5 days until the system collapsed into light and fire and silence. The world responded instantly. News broke across Earth and beyond. Protests in New Jakarta, celebrations in New Boston, hushed terror in the arcologies of Europa. Debate consumed every public channel. Was it defense? Revenge? Mass murder? Alia spent those days in the archives, dissecting what little they had recovered from the alien language. Her team discovered syntax patterns, inflectional harmonics, even what might have been poetry. One entry chilled her, a recurring phrase etched in recursive symbols. We remember what you forget. She printed it, taped it to the console where she worked. On the 4th day, a message arrived. Not from Theta 9X, but from a relay station in an uninhabited sector, deep space, fringe, barely inside charted territory. A single repeating phrase transmitted across dozens of bands. This was not us. The signal was alien, but unmistakably clear, accompanied by biometrics that suggested a divergence from the species that attacked Irene. 7 genetic cousins, but distinct. Survivors, maybe, or those who had exiled the ones who committed the attack. Alia brought the evidence to Dron. He didn't flinch. "It doesn't change what happened," he said. "It changes who we become because of it," she replied. But the mission was beyond recall. The star veil had passed its last correctional node. There was no turning back. Dron stood before Earth's leaders once more on the 5th day. He didn't argue, didn't persuade. He simply watched with them as a star went out. Theta 9X imploded with surgical perfection. No light, no flame, just a brief shiver in the fabric of space. And then nothing. No planets, no moons, no civilizations, only silence. For a moment, there was relief, satisfaction even, and then the first alien transmission arrived. Not a threat, not a retaliation, but a question. "Do you now understand the cost of being seen?" Alia read it and closed her eyes. Lien stood beside her in the viewing chamber, watching the dark patch where her son once lived. He didn't speak. Behind them, Dron remained at the glass, unmoving. Earth had answered. Now it was the galaxy's turn. The stars had grown quieter. Not in sound, for there was none in the void, but in presence. Relay stations once brimming with exploratory data now pulsed with static. Civilian vessels reported ghostly silhouettes in systems previously declared lifeless. The aftermath of Earth's retribution was not victory. It was dread. General Kale Dron stood in silence at the edge of Observation Deck 6, orbiting Saturn's moon Titan. His reflection in the reinforced viewport was unchanged, still sharp, still unreadable, but the space beyond had altered. The rings shimmered unnaturally, as if even they carried the echo of the system they'd erased. Behind him, Alia Voss entered, her footsteps unhurried. She carried a tablet loaded with declassified transcripts, censored data, and intercepted communications, an ever-growing archive of whispers from the dark. She didn't announce herself. She never did anymore. "They've stopped calling it an act of defense," she said finally. "Now they just call it the silence." Dron didn't respond. His hands were folded behind his back, gaze fixed on nothing and everything. Alia moved beside him, setting the tablet on the ledge. The artifact on Irene 7 wasn't unique. We confirmed at least 4 other relics embedded in deep planetary crusts. All dormant, all broadcasting on the same frequency. "Still listening," Dron murmured, "or watching." Lien Harrow's voice cut in softly from behind them. "Or warning." He stepped forward, wearing the same diplomatic uniform he'd always worn, immaculately plain, impossibly composed. But his eyes were tired, not from lack of sleep, but from seeing too much and understanding too little. The alien signal that arrived after Theta 9X was destroyed, Lien continued. "It's being translated faster now. Their linguistics obey fractal logic, recursive meaning. Poetry," Alia said, "memory, woven into syntax." Dron turned then, the motion slow. "And what does their poetry say about our actions?" "That we've been noticed," Lien said. "That what we did tore a hole in something older than our civilizations, older than language." Dron looked past them both. "Are we supposed to feel guilt?" "You're supposed to understand consequence," Lien replied. The general's gaze narrowed. "Understanding is a privilege in war. I chose deterrence. I made a decision the world wasn't brave enough to make." Alia lifted the tablet and projected a map of human colonies across the Orion arm. Each blinked in pale blue. Then red pulses began appearing. Systems reporting anomalous gravitational shifts, disappearing drones, planetary orbits decaying without cause. "This isn't deterrence," she said. "This is escalation." Dron crossed the room, examining the projection. "We haven't been attacked again." "No," Alia said, "but we're being tested, observed, dissected." Lien stepped closer, his voice low. "They're not retaliating. They're studying us." Dron exhaled, the breath sharp. Let them learn that Earth isn't prey." But Alia shook her head. "They're not trying to decide if we're prey. They're deciding if we're an infection." Silence settled again. Then the console pinged, an encrypted stream from a research station near Deneb 9. Dron tapped to open it. A scientist log appeared, shaking voice, wide eyes. We found one. Another artifact. Not inert. This one opened a gate. Not a wormhole. A perspective. The video shimmered. Behind the speaker, a vortex of light, an impossible geometry twisted reality itself. Then a figure, tall, featureless, draped in light and dark, stepped forward. No weapon, no threat, only a voice. Do not knock on what you do not intend to invite. The feed cut. Alia sat down slowly, hands trembling. They're trying to communicate. Every time we respond with force, we make ourselves smaller in their eyes. Lien looked to Dron. There's still time. A delegation. A message. Something that isn't annihilation. Dron stared at the spot where the figure had appeared. They had time to do the same before Irene 7. And maybe they did, Lien said. Maybe we weren't listening. Maybe we were too loud to hear. Dron turned away. We act from necessity, not idealism. Alia stood. Necessity doesn't erase morality. You think this is about morality? Dron's voice finally cracked. They ended 80,000 lives without hesitation. You don't reason with a force that sees your people as inconvenient anomalies. But we don't become better by becoming them, Alia said. Dron looked at her, really looked, as though trying to recognize the girl who once decoded ancient languages on a distant colony and sent whispers to the stars. She's gone, he said softly. The galaxy made sure of it. Outside, a burst of light flared in the blackness, another probe disappearing into nothing. Another whisper silenced before it could find a voice. Back at command, hours later, a new signal was intercepted. This time, it wasn't a warning or a question. It was a map. Hundreds of stars, each marked with an unfamiliar sigil. Most were dark, but a few pulsed with light like invitations. Lien brought it to the council. It's a choice, he said. A path. Dron watched silently from his seat. Alia, now elevated to Earth's Cultural Preservation Office, analyzed the data with her team. The sigils weren't coordinates. They were thresholds, systems that had passed or failed a test. The blinking ones were undecided. Earth was blinking. We're not at war, Alia said to the assembly. We're at trial. The chamber erupted in argument. Politicians, generals, scientists, colonists, each interpreting the signal through their own lens of fear or hope. And then the voice came again, across every channel, in every tongue. We are not your enemy, but neither are we your silence. In orbit above Earth, the Vigilant Horizon, Earth's most advanced diplomatic vessel, prepared for launch. Alia boarded first, accompanied by a select crew of linguists, diplomats, and scholars. Lien stayed behind, overseeing coordination from Earth. Dron did not go. Instead, he returned to Titan alone. Before the vessel departed, Alia contacted him one last time. You could come with us. I wouldn't know how to speak for peace, he said. Then come to learn, she replied. Dron looked at the viewport again, at the shifting shimmer of stars. I've made my mark, he said. Now I'll watch what becomes of it. The comms ended. The Vigilant Horizon disengaged from orbit and slipped into deep space, its engines quiet, its mission louder than war. Earth watched. The galaxy listened. And somewhere beyond the stars, judgment waited.